My name is Lyra Bennett, 29 years old.
The ballroom shimmered under golden chandeliers, a soft waltz playing somewhere between laughter and pretense. The air smelled of champagne, roses, and something colder, judgment wrapped in perfume. Every smile felt sharp enough to cut glass. Aunt Valerie's voice sliced through the noise. "She's just here for the free food." The laughter that followed was instant, brittle, echoing through the hall like shattering crystal. Forks froze midair. Someone choked on a laugh. My mother, Karen, stiffened beside me, her fork trembling slightly. She didn't look at me. She never did when this happened. I smiled instead, because silence, I had learned, was the only armor that didn't crack in public. "Honestly," Valerie continued, adjusting the diamond clasp on her shawl, "Chloe shouldn't have invited her. She's unemployed, single, and that dress," her lips curved like knives, "looks like it came from a clearance rack." Her daughter, the perfect bride Chloe, laughed behind a glass of rosé. "Mom, stop," she said, but her smirk begged her to continue. The chandelier light flickered across polished marble and crystal glasses. I folded my napkin slowly, deliberately, before meeting Valerie's gaze. "You always talk like you know everything about me," I said evenly. "Maybe it's time to update your information." The laughter faltered, thinning into murmurs. Karen's eyes begged me to stay quiet, but I wasn't 12 anymore. I wasn't the invisible niece everyone pitied. Valerie leaned closer, her perfume sweet but suffocating. "Denial is an empowerment, sweetheart. You're not fooling anyone." Her tone was honey, but her words dripped venom. The people at the table, cousins, in-laws, distant relatives, watched as if waiting for me to shatter. They'd been waiting for years. Ever since my father died and the inheritance skipped me entirely, they'd written me off as the lost cause, the disappointment in high heels. But not tonight. I took a sip of water, letting the silence stretch long enough to make her squirm. And then, just as I set the glass down, a man in a black suit appeared beside me, clean-cut, composed, an earpiece tucked discreetly behind his ear. "Miss Bennett," he said, his voice calm, respectful. "Your helicopter is ready. We can depart whenever you're ready." The room fell dead silent. Forks stopped clinking. Someone dropped a spoon. Even the music stumbled for a beat. Valerie blinked twice, her lipstick parting in disbelief. You're what?" I turned slightly, every movement unhurried. "Thank you, Ryan," I said to the man. "I'll be right out." He nodded, stepping back with quiet professionalism. The title, Miss Bennett, hung heavy in the air like perfume and power. I stood, smoothing the midnight blue silk of my gown, every eye following me as I pushed the chair back. "Excuse me," I said softly. "Seems I have somewhere to be." The room buzzed, confusion mixing with panic. Valerie stammered, You're joking, right? A helicopter?" I met her eyes, steady and unflinching, since I stopped explaining myself. Gasps rippled through the hall. Chloe's glass tilted, spilling wine across the white tablecloth like blood blooming in water. I walked through the stunned crowd, each step echoing against the marble floor. The chandeliers reflected in every pair of wide eyes I passed, people who had known me my whole life but never really seen me. When I reached the doors, the glass panels swung open with a whisper. Outside, the night air rushed in, cool and alive. The rhythmic thump of rotor blades pulsed through the darkness, steady, commanding. The helicopter waited on the manicured lawn, black and sleek under the moonlight, its lights glinting like distant stars. The wind caught my hair, whipping it across my face as the blades spun faster. Behind me, through the glass, Valerie stood frozen, clutching her jeweled clutch like a lifeline. Karen's face was pale, unreadable. "Lyra!" My mother's voice trembled, half question, half plea. "Where are you going?" I paused, just long enough to meet her eyes. "Home," I said quietly. "Some of us actually built one." And then I stepped into the helicopter. The roar drowned out everything else. The murmurs, the music, the brittle laughter fading behind me. As we lifted off, the ballroom shrank to a cluster of golden light against the dark. The city sprawled beneath us, glittering, indifferent. Ryan's voice came through the headset. "Destination confirmed, ma'am?" "Yes," I said. "Take us to the office. I want to review the acquisition before the market opens." "Understood." I leaned back, watching the skyline slide past the window. Neat, glowing, beautiful. From above, everything looked peaceful. But I knew better. Down there were the same people who laughed when I struggled, who smiled in my face while whispering behind my back. They had mocked the woman they thought was weak, but they had no idea that the company buying out Valerie's husband's entire business empire was mine. Bennett Holdings, my company. It wasn't always like this. 3 years ago, after my father's funeral, I was standing alone outside the church when a man named Thomas Reed approached me, my father's silent business partner. His voice was low, grave, but kind. "Your father believed in you," he said, "and so do I." He handed me a folder, a quiet inheritance, invisible to everyone else. His shares, his trust, his faith. I worked in silence. Nights blurred into years. Failure into fuel. I built something they could never imagine. And tonight, as the helicopter cut across the city sky, I realized the irony. The same people who had laughed at my struggle were toasting beneath a chandelier paid for by my contracts. Revenge wasn't planned. It was inevitable. The aircraft descended toward the rooftop pad of Bennett Holdings. The building towered above the city, its letters glowing white against the glass. Ryan stepped out first, offering his hand as the wind whipped around us. "Welcome back, ma'am," he said. I gave a small nod. My heels clicked against the concrete. "Let's finalize the Brooks Realty acquisition tonight." He hesitated. "Are you sure you want to do that now?" "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "It's time." Inside, the lobby gleamed, modern, lavender-scented, silent. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline, reflecting my own image, composed, unyielding, untouchable. But beneath that reflection was something else, an old ache that hadn't faded. Valerie's laughter, my mother's silence, the years of being underestimated. I touched the cool glass, watching the city breathe beneath me. For a fleeting second, I saw my father's reflection beside mine, smiling, proud, ghost-like. "You were right," I whispered. "Power doesn't shout. It waits." Tomorrow, they would learn how long mine had been waiting. The morning started before the sun, the city still half asleep, its windows blue with pre-dawn. I arrived at Bennett Holdings in a silence that felt ceremonial. The elevator hummed, the mirrored walls reflecting a woman I was still getting used to. Steady spine, unflinching eyes. As the doors opened to my floor, the office lights brightened with motion sensors, flooding the glass with a clean, clinical glow. Ryan was already waiting by my desk, tie straight, expression careful. "Brooks Realty," he said, setting a stack of documents on the table. "All signatures collected. The wire is cleared. We can finalize." I ran my fingers along the folder's edge, the paper crisp under my nails. "Do it." He hesitated. "Lyra." I looked up. He never used my first name at work. "There's no backing out after this," he said. "Not just legally, emotionally." He searched my face as if he might find a crack in it. "You're about to take everything from them. Are you taking something from yourself, too?" The question landed like the faintest tap on glass. Small, but the sound carried. I kept my voice even. "They taught me what power looks like when you have none," I said. "I'm giving the lesson back." Ryan nodded, but not in agreement. More like acceptance. "I'll cue the compliance team." He left the room with quiet efficiency, and I let the empty space breathe. Outside the window, the morning began to lift itself over the skyline, light pooling along the edges of towers. I thought of the night my father died, how the house had filled with casseroles and condolences that tasted like stale sugar, how Aunt Valerie had turned the wake into a performance, her arm around my mother, her pity a blade, how no one had stopped her, not even Karen, especially not Karen. I closed my eyes for a second. The ache didn't drain, it condensed. A chime on the security system cut through the quiet. Ryan reappeared, voice low. "He's here." "Who?" "Robert Brooks," he paused. "And he's angry." "Let him in." Robert entered like a storm in a suit, tie askew, rage burning red under his skin. He didn't sit. "You think this is a game?" he demanded. "Buying my company overnight? You want headlines, is that it? You want to prove something?" I leaned back and let the calm attach itself to me. "I don't need to prove anything," I said. "I own it." He slammed his palm on my desk, hard enough to rattle a pen. "You're ruining my family." "I didn't ruin anything," I said softly. "I'm just the bill arriving for years of interest." He opened and closed his mouth, searching for the right insult, the right blow. "You're heartless." "No." I stood, folding my hands. "I'm patient." He took a step closer, breath sharp with coffee and panic. "You don't understand what you're doing," he said through clenched teeth. "There are employees, families, people who rely on me." "I understand that perfectly," I said. which is why those employees will have job security and honest leadership. I let the next words come out steady as a scalpel, something they weren't afforded under you. His glare flashed toward the contract folder. You can't keep it. You think you'll sleep at night? The corner of my mouth lifted. Lately, I sleep quite well. Ryan stepped forward. Mr. Brooks, if you could take a seat, we'll... Robert scoffed and didn't move. You won't get away with this. Robert, I said, and my voice reset the room. You have 24 hours to turn over all access credentials, physical keys, and leadership correspondence. Effective 9 a.m. You'll step aside. Your severance terms are inside the packet. I recommend a lawyer, not a tantrum. His face went gray, the way a sky goes before rain. For a second, I thought he might cry. The thought didn't thrill me. It exhausted me. He turned to leave, then pivoted back. Valerie will never forgive you, he spat. She's not my judge, I said, and she's not your savior. He left without slamming the door. Ryan exhaled. I'll have security meet him at Brooks to begin the transition. Thank you. After he left, the quiet returned. I stared at the city and saw it for what it had always been, a web of windows and stories, some bright, some broken, all of them watching. I touched the cold glass and thought of Thomas Reed's steady hands passing me that first folder, the way he'd said, "Your father believed in you." I do too. It had not felt like a gift then, so much as a challenge. I had spent 3 years answering it. By 9 o'clock, Brooks Realty was ours. The formal announcement hit the wires at 9:07. My office phone began to pulse with calls. I ignored them. The intercom buzzed instead. Miss Bennett, my assistant said, voice careful. You have a visitor. Who? A small pause. Mrs. Valerie Brooks? The air thinned. I nodded once, though no one could see it. Send her in. Valerie entered, dressed in the same shade of superiority she wore to weddings. Silk, jewelry, flawless makeup, but everything was misaligned by the tension in her mouth. She took in the room the way someone takes in a battlefield, quickly, calculating exits. What is this? She asked, not looking at me yet, her eyes scanning the documents on my desk. What have you done? Welcome to Bennett Holdings, I said. Congratulations are in order. Technically, you're working for me now. Her eyes cut to mine, wide. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm rarely anything else these days. She laughed, thin, brittle, nervous. This is a stunt. It's a transfer, I corrected. Asset to asset, decision to consequence. She swallowed. You've humiliated me. I tilted my head. You taught me how. Color rose in her cheeks. You think this makes you powerful? Buying a company like a handbag? I didn't buy a handbag, I said. I bought the room you used to mock me in. The silence that followed was dense. Outside, a cloud slid over the sun. The office dimmed by a breath. Valerie's gaze flicked to the skyline, then back, and something happened in her face. A minute falter, a shadow across the arrogance. I didn't feel the triumph I'd expected, only fatigue. Only a grief that had learned to dress in success. Why now? She whispered. Why like this? Because mercy wasn't the language anyone here understood. She took a step forward, her voice softer. Your mother has been calling me all morning. I didn't flinch. She should call you. Another pause, then quietly. I was jealous. The admission didn't fit in her mouth. It came out raw and lopsided. Of what? I asked. My clearance rack dress? Of how people loved you, she said, eyes brightening. Even when you had nothing. They still loved you. I had to purchase every ounce of attention I ever got. She gave a brittle smile, and even that expired. A small, stubborn part of me softened. Another part stiffened harder. I nodded toward the documents. You'll resign today, I said, and you'll make a public apology to every person you've stepped on, not just me. She pressed her fingers to the edge of my desk, nails perfect and useless. If I do, she said, will you stop? Stop what? Crushing us. There it was, the word she finally recognized. Us. I folded my arms. I didn't come for ruin, I said. I came for recognition. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she reached for the handle of her purse, an automatic movement, as if to retrieve a tissue, a lipstick, a shield. Her hand trembled. Instead of a compact, she drew out a thin, worn envelope, the paper softened by time. She didn't look at it. She looked at me. And for the first time since we'd been tied to each other by blood and contempt, her eyes held something like truth. I took something from you, she said. The room shrank to the size of the envelope. The hum of the air conditioning became a roar. When your father died, she went on, voice catching on the word father,
A letter arrived at the house, addressed to you. Karen wasn't home. The mailman gave it to me. Her breath trembled. I kept it.
My heartbeat kicked once, hard, like a misstep on a stair. Why? I asked, but it came out smaller than I felt. She lifted a shoulder, the weakest gesture I'd ever seen from her. Because I was cruel. Because I was angry that your father loved you the way no one had ever loved me. Her eyes shine burned. Because I thought you didn't deserve it. She slid the envelope across the desk. It made a soft sound against the wood, the sound of something long delayed finally arriving. My name was on it in my father's handwriting. The breath left my body in a rush I couldn't disguise. The seal was still unbroken, wax faded to the color of old brick. I'm sorry, she whispered. The words didn't fix anything, but they turned a light on in a room I hadn't realized was still dark. For a long time, I didn't move. Then I reached out and took the envelope with both hands, as if it might disintegrate if I held it carelessly. My fingers shook as I broke the seal. The paper inside was thin, almost translucent, like the kind priests used to fold. I unfolded it. I saw the first line. My dearest girl. The rest blurred. My throat tightened. I blinked until the letters steadied, until my father's voice rose from the page, patient and kind. Like footsteps approaching down a hall I thought led nowhere. Valerie's breath hitched. She was crying now, quietly, like someone at the back of a church. When I finished the first paragraph, I lowered the letter and stared beyond the glass, where the city had brightened again, as if a cloud had made up its mind to move. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel defeated. I felt awake. You don't deserve forgiveness, I said, not unkindly. But maybe you deserve peace. She nodded, a tiny stunned gesture, as if the concept itself hurt. You'll resign today, I repeated, and you'll make it right publicly. She wiped her cheek. I will. I placed my palm flat on the letter. The paper warmed under my skin. You were always right, Dad, I murmured. To the room, to the page, to the girl I used to be. Kindness was never weakness. And for the first time since the helicopter lifted off last night, I wondered not what I could take back, but what I could choose to put down. The next 3 days passed like smoke. The news spread faster than I expected. Bennett Holdings acquires Brooks Realty overnight. Every channel, every business headline, every whisper in the industry. I didn't even have to look at the comments to know what they said. Wasn't she the broke cousin? Guess tables turn when arrogance meets karma. By the fourth morning, I couldn't stand the quiet. The walls of my office, once symbols of victory, now echoed hollow. The letter from my father sat on my desk, folded carefully in its worn envelope. I'd read it 10 times, maybe 20, each line slower than the last. My dearest girl, it began. If you're reading this, I didn't get the chance to tell you in person. You have more strength than anyone I know. Don't let them convince you that kindness is weakness. Build your world, but don't lose your heart doing it. Those words had stopped me cold, because that was exactly what I'd done. Built my world, and somewhere in the scaffolding, buried my heart. I was staring out the window when Ryan knocked softly. Reporters are calling again, he said. They want a statement. No statement, I said automatically. He hesitated, then added, Valerie's been trying to reach you. Of course she had. Let her, I said quietly. I'm not ready. Ryan nodded and left me alone again. The city glittered below, all movement and meaning. I thought about the night of the wedding, the sneers, the laughter, the silence from my own mother. Maybe that silence was what still burned. The phone buzzed again. Mom. The screen blinked with her name until it dimmed. I didn't answer. But that evening, I did something I hadn't planned. I went home early. Not to my penthouse, but to the old apartment I kept, the one with creaky floors and a view of nothing in particular. I made tea, pulled a blanket over my legs, and read my father's letter again. His voice in those words steadied me more than any empire ever had. The next morning, I woke to another message, short, trembling. Mom, please, can I see you? I almost deleted it. Almost. But then I thought of that line again. Don't lose your heart doing it. That afternoon, when she arrived, I barely recognized her. Karen had always been elegance wrapped in control. But today, she looked smaller, her face soft, her confidence cracked. She didn't wait for small talk. I saw Valerie's interview, she said, voice breaking. She told everyone what she did about the letter. I nodded once. Karen's eyes shimmered. I realized I did the same thing, she said. Not by stealing, but by staying silent. I let them humiliate you. I should have protected you.
I was ashamed of how little you had, when I should have been proud of how much strength you showed.
Her words fell into the room like rain after a long drought. Do you know what hurt most? I said finally. It wasn't Valerie's laughter, it was your silence. Karen covered her mouth, her shoulders trembling. I know, I know. The only sound was the city's hum outside. Then she whispered, I can't fix the past, but maybe we can start again. Please, Lyra. I stared at her hands, the same hands that had once braided my hair before school. Then, slowly, I reached forward and took them. They were still warm, still human. Maybe we can, I said. She cried softly, pulling me into her arms. For the first time in years, it didn't feel forced. When she let go, her eyes were red but peaceful. Your father would have been so proud, she said. I smiled faintly. Maybe now I can finally believe that. The next morning, I stood before a crowd in the main hall of Brooks Realty, my building now. Cameras lined the back, reporters murmured, flashes blinking like nervous heartbeats. Employees filled the space, whispering, watching. Valerie stood near the front, posture tense, but composed. When it was my turn, I stepped up to the podium. My voice carried across the marble floor. Some of you know me as the woman who took control overnight, I began, but that's not the story I want remembered. The murmurs quieted. I was humiliated once, publicly, cruelly, by someone who thought my worth depended on my status. Instead of defending myself, I built something from that pain. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that revenge isn't strength. I paused. Redemption is. A ripple passed through the crowd. Valerie lowered her head. So today, I continued, I'm appointing a new management team. The people who've been overlooked for years. The ones who kept this company alive when no one gave them credit. Gasps spread, faces lit with disbelief, then hope. And as for Mrs. Brooks, I said softly, I accept her apology. For a heartbeat, silence hung. Then applause, slow, uncertain at first. Then growing into something that felt like relief. Valerie's tears fell freely now. After the press conference, she approached me. You didn't have to do that, she said, voice shaking. I know, I replied, but I'm tired of being defined by what hurt me. Her lips trembled. Thank you, Lyra. Just don't waste it, I said. She nodded, clutching her purse like a promise. Later outside, the afternoon sun scattered light across the glass towers. Ryan waited by the black car. Heading home, ma'am, he asked. I looked toward the sky. Somewhere above, a faint hum echoed, the same rhythm of rotor blades from that night. But this time, it didn't sound like escape. It sounded like freedom. No, I said, smiling softly. Let's take the long way. I think I've been rushing through life long enough. He smiled back. Yes, ma'am. As the car pulled into the city traffic, the skyline unfolded before me. Endless, alive, forgiving. And for the first time since that wedding night, I wasn't chasing power. I wasn't proving anyone wrong. I was simply living. Because true power wasn't in the helicopter, or the company, or the revenge. It was in the moment I finally chose peace.